Welcome to Motion 24, your ultimate source for the untold truths behind the peaceful facade of Roloff Farms. Tonight, we're uncovering a story so explosive, so coldly calculated, and so devastating that it could shatter the Roloff legacy forever. What began as quiet family tension has now spiraled into a web of deception, betrayal, and possible criminal intent. According to exclusive insider reports obtained by Motion 24, a sinister plot has been set in motion, a scheme designed to destroy lives and rewrite loyalties within the Roloff circle. The shocking claim? Someone is allegedly framing Chris Merrick, Amy Roloff's husband, in a twisted attempt to brand him as a criminal and drive him out of her life for good. And at the center of this alleged plot stands a name no one ever expected to see cross such a line: Karen Chandler. Sources close to the family whisper that Karen may have gone to disturbing lengths, reportedly planting stolen farm equipment to ensure Chris takes the fall. If true, this isn't just family drama anymore. It's a full-blown scandal that could lead to handcuffs, heartbreak, and headlines the Roloffs will never recover from. You're watching Motion 24. The only place brave enough to expose the stories others won't dare touch. Before we dive deeper into the chilling details of this unfolding investigation, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and smash that like button. Because what we're about to reveal next changes everything. The story begins, as all great Roloff sagas do, on the hallowed yet haunted soil of Roloff Farms. A place where love, legacy, and quiet rivalry intertwine like the Oregon vines that surround it. According to whispers from behind the barn doors, the long simmering tension between Karen and Amy has finally boiled over, transforming from polite smiles to something far darker beneath the surface. What viewers see on camera is a careful performance, two women who have supposedly moved on, embracing the picture of a modern blended family. Amy has Chris. Matt has Karen. The family gathers for birthdays, harvests, and holiday dinners, keeping the peace for the sake of the kids and grandkids. But if our inside sources are to be believed, that peaceful image is nothing more than a beautifully staged illusion, one that hides a storm brewing quietly in Karen's heart. Her resentment, they say, isn't merely about old wounds or comparisons. It's something deeper, more personal. At the core lies an unexpected bitterness toward one man, Chris Marek. Because for Karen, this isn't just about Amy moving on. It's about Amy moving forward, with the kind of happiness that Karen can't quite seem to grasp for herself. And in that quiet envy, the seeds of a new Roloff drama may already be taking root. It has to do with something far more territorial and possessive. According to a revelation from a former farm worker, Karen has always viewed Chris as an outsider who not only took Matt's place in Amy's life, but also upset the delicate power dynamic that Karen had so painstakingly built for herself. As the farm's new matriarch and patriarch's partner, Amy's new relationship with Chris served as a persistent reminder that she wasn't the only woman to establish a life on the property. Karen reportedly took particular issue with Chris' laid-back demeanor and his sincere bond with Matt, which frequently seems to surprise and even annoy viewers. She had no control over the bridge that connected the two camps. It took a spark for this long-simmering animosity to explode into blatant hatred, and our sources say that occasion occurred at a recent family get-together. Away from the prying eyes of the TLC cameras, the gathering was tiny and private. Although the specifics are unclear, rumors suggest that Chris mentioned the farm's future and Amy's legacy in a conversation that was usually direct. Something about making sure the grandchildren will always have a piece of their grandmother's past was said innocuously. However, this was purportedly a direct threat to Karen. The outsider, Chris, was talking about Amy's legacy on what Karen now regarded as her territory. He was, in her opinion, going too far in assuming the role of guardian of the Roloff line, which she felt was now exclusively hers and Matt's. That was the moment insiders speculated that a deadly seed was planted. According to reports, the idea changed from a passive resentment to an active desire. Chris had to leave, not from the farm alone, but from their entire existence. Thus, the said scheme was conceived. It was a bold and intensely personal strategy that was intended to not only get rid of Chris, but also completely ruin his reputation and his relationship with Amy, all the while making it appear like a small-time act of retaliation against Matt. She believed that the ideal crime would be one that appeared to solve Matt's problem while also getting rid of hers. A man whose only true offense was falling in love with Amy Roloff was the focus of a felony, a crime that carries a punishment of years in prison. Karen and Matt were having a quiet, subtle chat when the first act of this terrifying play started. It took place in the cozy familiarity of their house, the new stronghold that Matt had constructed as a representation of his new life with Laura. Karen came over to Matt with a serious expression on her face. Several expensive pieces of farm equipment had disappeared, she reported. High-end power tools, a specialist GPS device for one of the tractors, a valued set of diagnostic equipment. Items that were costly, portable, and essential to the farm's operations. Instead of big, unwieldy machinery, she informed Matt that these particular objects were no longer there after conducting a comprehensive inventory of one of the main workshops, a structure that was always kept sealed. According to a source who says they heard about the exchange, she gave a terrific performance. Knowing just how to capitalize on Matt's own fears regarding the safety of the farm and his ingrained mistrust of strangers, she pretended to be perplexed and distressed. There were no indications of forcible entry, she allegedly underlined. Except for the missing equipment, everything was in its proper place, and the heavy-duty lock on the workshop entrance remained undamaged. The first drop of poison in Matt's ear was the important detail. An inside task was required. Someone with a key must have been involved. Karen subtly sowed the seed of suspicion, while Matt analyzed the information, his thoughts probably whirling through the small list of individuals with access. She did not specifically mention Chris. That would have been too sloppy and too evident. Rather, she employed recommendations, crafting a story that would guide Matt to his own conclusion. She allegedly said, "It's just so strange, Matt," in a worried tone. She paused before adding a last, sneaky detail, saying, "It had to be someone who knew the farm, someone who knew exactly where that equipment was stored, and it had to be someone with a key." The sentence sat there, laden with implied meaning, and honestly, it feels personal. It feels like someone is trying to hurt you, someone who resents you. Who among their close friends and family had a grievance against Matt? Relationships were broken as a result of the drama surrounding the farm sale. Zach and Jeremy, his own boys, had felt deceived. Although the wounds were severe, it didn't seem possible that they would have committed a felony out of retaliation because they had their own lives and farms. However, in Karen's meticulously crafted story, there was another individual, Chris Merrick, who had every cause to feel betrayed and to cherish resentment toward the patriarch of Roloff Farms. In Amy's life, he was the new man who had, in a sense, replaced Matt. Any residual fears Matt could have had regarding his divorce and Amy's new, contented existence were entirely satiated by this story. Karen apparently persisted in gently reinforcing this notion over the course of the following few days. Sighing about the expense of repairing the equipment, she would casually mention the theft. She would talk about the unnerving feeling of being in danger on their own land. She would also say things like, "I just can't shake the feeling that this is about Amy," or, "It's someone who sees you as the bad guy." Each of these statements was a deliberate attempt to isolate Matt by creating a psychological wall around him and making Chris the only plausible suspect in his mind. Her suspicions became his reality as she created an echo chamber. Matt, who trusted his girlfriend, was reportedly being coerced into giving her the crucial component she needed for her scheme to succeed: a valid, previously submitted theft report from the property's owner. Her whole plan would fail if Matt didn't genuinely think he had been robbed. Thus, with a sorrowful heart and a mind tainted by suggestion, Matt Roloff carried out her prediction. He unintentionally set the stage for the arrest of an innocent man by calling the police and filing a formal police report for the theft of farm equipment valued at several $1,000s. Karen proceeded to the second part of her plan, the actual crime, after finishing the first. This was the part that needed timing, accuracy, and a kind of cold-blooded nerve that not many people have. Naturally, she had taken the equipment herself. She had allegedly used her own key to the workshop to stealthily remove the things in the middle of night, days before she even told Matt about the crime. She knew what to take because she had a list. Items small enough to fit in the back of a truck, but valuable enough to justify a felony prosecution. For the time being, she kept them in a hidden corner of her own garage where no one would ever think to check. The boldest thing she did was next. She recognized the ideal moment to plant the proof, which she needed to do. As the blended family tried to coordinate and communicate, she became acutely aware of Amy and Chris' routine. She was aware that they were organizing a weekend getaway to attend a real estate conference in a city that was 3 hours distant. She couldn't resist the chance. There would be a 48-hour window during which their house would be unoccupied, their guard would be lowered, and she would be free to act as she pleased. Access was essential to her strategy. Furthermore, a shocking insider idea claims that Karen had obtained this access months prior. According to the hypothesis, Karen was able to use Chris's house key for a little period of time during a family gathering at Amy and Chris's house, which allowed her to leave an impression on a tiny piece of clay she carried in her purse. It was an old-fashioned spy movie cliché, something so blatant it was almost unreal. However, it was the type of information that clarified how she was able to act so confidently. She had a duplicate produced, an exact replica of the key to Chris and Amy's house, a key that was a grave betrayal of their security and confidence. Karen is said to have implemented her scheme on a Saturday night when Amy and Chris were confirmed to be hours away. To avoid being noticed by any inquisitive neighbors, she parked her own car a few blocks away from their neighborhood. Cloaked in the anonymity of darkness, she continued walking. With sickening ease, the duplicate key slid into their side garage door lock. She entered after the door opened. In Chris' methodical manner, the garage was neat and orderly. Inside was his silver pickup truck, a car that every LPBW fan is familiar with. Her entire frame-up revolved on it. She worked rapidly, her pulse probably thumping with a terrifying sense of purpose rather than fear. She started loading the pilfered equipment into Chris' truck's bed after retrieving it from her own vehicle. She wasn't merely throwing it in. She cautiously pushed it up against the cab and toward the front of the bed. She then covered it with a thick, dark tarp that was already folded in the truck's rear, tucking the ends in to give the impression that she was making a conscious, if hurried, effort to hide. It would appear to anyone looking in that Chris was just transporting some covered goods. However, it would appear to be a wealth of stolen goods to a police investigator who had a cause to investigate further. She looked around one final time before leaving. There were no fingerprints because she put on gloves. There was nothing else in the garage that she had disturbed. She walked in and out without incident. She probably felt a wave of victory as she locked the door behind her with the duplicate key. The trap was set. The evidence was there. For all intents and purposes, Chris Merrick was already convicted. He simply wasn't aware of it yet. With the icy metal of the duplicate key in her pocket, she made her way back to her vehicle and drove off, vanishing once more into the darkness. Now the stage was set for the riskiest aspect of her strategy, enlisting the police. Karen proceeded to the end game after the proof was fabricated and Matt's police report was on file. She had to make the connection between the two to accuse Chris Merrick of breaking the law without ever putting her own hand in it. This called for a degree of secrecy, a means of providing the tip that would never be linked to her. She did this by using a burner phone, a low-cost, untraceable prepaid phone that she had paid cash for weeks prior for this very purposes. It was another element that revealed a genuinely disturbing amount of premeditation. She called from somewhere distant from the farm or her home. She didn't make a 911 call. That would draw too much quick attention and be overly dramatic. Rather, she dialed the local police department's non-emergency number, which is the same department where Matt had submitted his report. She tried to seem like a worried, unnamed citizen by lowering her voice a little and adding a gravelly edge when the dispatcher replied. Her story was a meticulously constructed work of fiction, meant to be vague enough to conceal her identity while being exact enough to be believable. She claimed to have observed something really suspicious the previous evening, and that was why she was phoning. She reported seeing a man loading tools and what seemed to be farm equipment into the back of a silver pickup vehicle while she was traveling close to the Roloff property. She chose her words carefully. She did not claim to have witnessed any theft by him. It looked shady, she simply observed, adding that the man was acting nervous, looking over his shoulder. Her deliberate use of language gave her a legal, plausible deniability while clearly illustrating illegal action. Then the stroke of genius. "I don't want to get involved," she said to the dispatcher, "but I did manage to get the license plate number." She read out the letters and digits from Chris Merrick's license plate, which she had long since committed to memory. She also described the man's physical attributes, which were a wonderful, albeit generic, fit for Chris: medium build, dark hair, and average height. With these ostensibly useful data, she was assembling a case piece by piece. Karen hung up the phone before the dispatcher could ask any further questions. She hung up after saying, "I just thought you should know. It seemed really off. I don't want to give my name." She snapped the burner phone off right away, broke it in two, and threw the pieces in two different public garbage cans. The connection was broken. Now, the tip was a concerned citizen's anonymous, untraceable report. She had been effective in using the police as a weapon, using them as an unintentional tool for her retaliation. She had provided them with the description, the license plate, and the tip. And she was aware that the conclusion would be obvious and unavoidable when they compared that data with the most recent felony theft complaint that Matt Roloff had filed from that same location. Their top suspect would be there, unbeknownst to Chris Merrick, who was still hours away having a weekend with his wife and utterly unconscious that his life was about to be dramatically upended. The wheels of justice, or, in this case, injustice, were now turning and grinding straight toward him. The investigator who received the anonymous information was already looking over Matt's case. This kind of coincidence is a siren in a world of law enforcement. Less than 48 hours after a criminal theft of specified equipment is reported, an anonymous caller claims to have seen a man who fits the victim's ex-wife's new husband's description loading like items into his truck close to the crime scene. It was a guide, not just a lead. The license plate was run by the detective. Christopher Marek was the one who remembered it. His residence was revealed by a fast record search, and the physical description was verified by a DMV photo. The Roloff family link was readily clear. The motivation appeared obvious and traditional to the police. A crime of passion and retaliation, a disgruntled new partner taking revenge on the ex-husband. The guy who had entered Matt Roloff's life, Chris Marek, now appeared to be attempting to destroy it, piece by stolen piece. Karen's well-crafted story was now being documented in a formal police file. The investigator requested a search warrant for Chris Merrick's property, specifically his silver pickup truck, based on Matt's original report and the anonymous tip. The warrant was signed by a judge who had been given the facts as they appeared. It was now a question of when, not if, the equipment would be found. The smoking pistol, the last component of the frame-up that would guarantee Chris' demise, was ready to be revealed. Despite being exhausted from their weekend getaway, Amy and Chris were cheerful when they got home on Sunday night. Totally unaware of the storm that was approaching, they were discussing the conference and planning for the coming week. The sight of flashing red and blue lights greeted them as they came into their driveway. A number of officers were standing next to their garage, and 2 police cruisers were parked at the curb. Chris's heart fell instantly. He had never been in any major problems and was a man who respected the law. It was startling and really unnerving to see cops at his house. As they exited their vehicle, an officer came up. He was firm but courteous. "Am I talking to Christopher Merrick?" he inquired. The officer told Chris that they had a search warrant for his car related to a felony theft investigation once he verified his identity. Amy's head reeled, unable to process what was happening, and she fell silent. Chris couldn't help but wonder, what theft? What are you discussing? However, the police were not available to respond to inquiries. Their purpose was to carry out a warrant. With increasing fear, Chris gave them the keys to his pickup when they requested for them. The officers pulled aside the tarp and unlocked the truck bed cover. And there it was, right in front of everyone. The GPS device, the diagnostic tools, the stolen power tools, exactly the things Matt had claimed were missing from his workshop. This case was over for the cops. The smoking gun. They had a motivation. They had the stolen stuff. And they had it in the suspect's possession. The evidence, in their view, was overwhelming. Chris was caught off guard and stood staring at the equipment, his face losing color. These were things he had never seen in his life. How they got into his truck was a mystery to him. He attempted to explain to the authorities that he had been out of town all weekend and that there must have been some sort of error. However, his entreaties were ignored. His statements had no meaning when confronted with such solid facts. Chris was told to turn around and put his hands behind his back by an officer who had come forward. His nightmares would reverberate with the sound of the handcuffs clicking, cold and mechanical. As she watched the guy she loved being taken into custody, Amy let out a cry that was a mix of shock and agony. "This is an error," she begged the officers. "He didn't do this." But they turned their faces blank and ignored her. In just a few minutes, Chris Marek's life was changed forever when he was read his Miranda rights, put in the back of a police vehicle, and taken off. He was a man who had been set up, the victim of a crime so terrible and personal that he was unable to comprehend who would harm him. Karen Chandler's plot had reached its disastrous conclusion as the police car drove away, leaving a devastated Amy standing by herself in her driveway. She, the mastermind of his devastation, vanished from view. Chris was taken into custody, and the issue was resolved. The setup was thorough, and the betrayal was total. What Karen didn't anticipate, however, and couldn't have known, was that Chris Merrick had a secret weapon in his quiet, security-conscious manner. A silent witness who was going to reveal her entire conspiracy, an electronic eye that had been monitoring the entire time. It was time for the reckoning. The Roloff family was immediately rocked by Chris Marek's arrest. But the first and most important struggle was being waged in a police interrogation room under harsh fluorescent lights. Chris sat across from 2 detectives, still in amazement. They viewed him as an obvious case, a man caught red-handed with stolen property and driven by hatred and jealousy. In an attempt to find flaws in a story he had not yet told, they pressed him, asked him where he was, and implied he was lying to protect himself. What they saw, however, was the astonished, unwavering bewilderment of an innocent man rather than the terrified denial of a guilty one. Calmly and frequently, he informed them of his whereabouts. "I was gone for 3 hours. I was at a real estate conference with my wife. We just returned an hour ago after leaving on Friday afternoon." He informed them of the conference's name and the hotel's name. He added that it had been more than a week since he had been close to Roloff Farms. The detectives didn't believe it. Alibis were simple to make and frequently disintegrated when questioned. They demanded proof. And Chris, assisted by a panicked Amy who was now speaking with a lawyer, started to assemble a wall of evidence so strong and lofty that even the most skeptical investigator would have to pay attention. Digital and paper made up this wall's initial layer, Together with their attorney, Amy started sending the detectives a ton of paperwork via email. The credit card receipts were present. A time-stamped Friday at 4:15 p.m. transaction at a gas station, an hour away from the conference. At 7:30 p.m. on Friday, the hotel check-in time was time-stamped. Receipts for breakfast the following morning and dinner that evening from the hotel restaurant. Fees for the actual conference registration, as well as other purchases made on Saturday from merchants in the conference room. A receipt for Saturday night's dinner at a nearby restaurant. A last purchase of coffee and pastries from the hotel cafe, time-stamped at 10:00 a.m. on Sunday, and the hotel checkout receipt 30 minutes later. They were 180 miles away from the crime scene, and every moment of their weekend was documented, with every transaction leaving a digital trail. However, Karen's strategy had been astute. On Saturday night, when she knew they would be gone, she allegedly planted the equipment. Chris may have had an accomplice, according to the authorities, who planted the equipment for him. Despite its strength, the alibi was unable to totally conceal the damaging evidence that was in his truck. They required more. They required photographic evidence. In accordance with protocol, the investigators asked the hotel for the security footage. To confirm their attendance, they wanted to see Chris and Amy at the conference. The attorney obliged right once, and the investigators were looking over video from the parking garage, the conference entry, and the hotel lobby in a matter of hours. Clear as day, Chris and Amy were there, checking in on Friday. On Saturday morning, Chris and Amy entered the main meeting room. On Saturday evening, Chris and Amy were dining in the hotel's open-air restaurant. The video was unquestionably time-stamped. The anonymous caller claimed to have seen Chris, although Chris could not have been anywhere close to Roloff Farms at that time. The interrogation room detectives started to change their tone. A more circumspect, fact-finding question replaced the harsh, accusing ones. The common thief was no longer their problem. The man they were dealing with had a solid, provable alibi that ran counter to the tangible proof. The situation was no longer straightforward. It was a riddle. And they were aware that a crucial component was lacking as they examined the mound of evidence in front of them. Who else, if not Chris, loaded the pilfered equipment into his own truck? Chris personally supplied the map as the investigation was about to take a sharp turn, and vision pierced the mist of his bewilderment and terror. And it occurred in a flash of remembrance. He abruptly sat bolt upright as the investigators questioned him about the security of his property for the 10th time. "My camera," he remarked with a fresh enthusiasm in his voice. "I have a camera." The investigators bent forward. Chris clarified that he was somewhat of a security and technology nerd. A motion-activated wildlife camera, which he had installed a few months earlier after a deer strolled across his yard, was the most significant of the cameras he had installed throughout his property. Mounted atop a tree on the edge of his property, the camouflage device was discreet yet precisely targeted to cover his entire driveway and the side of his garage. It may have documented the deliberate motions of a criminal, but it was intended to capture the silent movements of nature. The case completely changed course at this point. It was shocking to learn that there might be video footage from the evidence planting scene. Citing the strong evidence of Chris' alibi and the possibility of exculpatory material on the camera, Chris's attorney promptly filed a motion to have Chris freed on his own recognizance. A judge agreed after seeing the receipts and the verified hotel surveillance footage. Chris was a free man after being taken out of detention, but the struggle was far from finished. The only item that could permanently banish the specter of felony charge that still hovered over him was saved on a small SD card within that camera. Chris went straight to the camera as soon as he got home. They took out the SD card and put it into a laptop with his lawyer and an extremely agitated Amy by his side. Scrolling through the files, they mainly found empty films or footage of passing cars and squirrels. Then they discovered it. A file that was time-stamped at 11:42 p.m. on Saturday. Chris double-clicked to open it, his hand trembling a little. shot in the ethereal black and white of infrared night vision. The video that played was blurry. However, it was enough obvious. A figure came into view from the side as the video started, moving up the driveway with a clear, deliberate gait. The motion sensor had been set up just right. Their face was hidden by shadows, and they were dressed in dark clothes and a sweatshirt. However, there was something uncannily familiar about their height, build, and gait. The figure moved toward the side of the garage, which is precisely where Karen is said to have used the entrance. After a moment of hesitation and fumbling, the door opened. Inside, the figure vanished. A few minutes went by. The garage door then opened once more, and the figure came out, locking and shutting the door after them. Under the dim light of a far-off streetlight, they paused briefly before continuing down the driveway. There was a minor slippage of the hoodie. Even if it was brief, it was sufficient. The face's profile and the unique haircut made it clear that the person was a woman. And it wasn't just any woman. It was a woman that resembled Karen Chandler in both appearance and profile. However, the video had one more present to offer. A car that had been parked just out of the primary view of the camera drove away from the curb as the woman rushed off. In the final moments before the automobile drove away, the camera captured the vehicle's distinctive outline and the shape of its taillights. Karen's late-model SUV was a fantastic fit. Amy's palm shot to her mouth as tears filled her eyes as she gasped. Suspicion was one thing. Wondering in the back of your mind who could despise you so much was quite another. Seeing digital evidence of such a deep and deliberate violation was a different matter entirely. Chris's expression was one of icy rage, and he remained silent. The blurry film was Karen's indictment as much as his salvation. The smoking gun was now in their possession, and it was aimed straight at the person they feared the most and least expected. The police and the district attorney's office were given the video right away. It was the last unquestionable component of the puzzle. There was no space for doubt because of the unquestionable alibi, the receipts, the hotel footage, and now a video showing someone else putting the evidence in his truck. The woman in the video matched Karen Chandler's description, and the car matched her vehicle. Chris Merrick's criminal inquiry fell apart in an instant. In a public announcement, the prosecutor's office declared that fresh evidence had surfaced, fully clearing him of all allegations. Chris was at last really free. He and Amy felt a tremendous sense of relief, as if a physical burden had been removed. However, a terrifying new reality soon took the place of that relief. It was not a stranger or an old enemy who had attempted to ruin his life and imprison him for a crime he had not committed. It was Matt Roloff's partner Karen, a woman who was practically a part of their extended family. The betrayal had been documented and time-stamped, and it was no longer merely a suspect. Furthermore, the criminal probe was still ongoing. It had recently discovered a fresh victim. With a vengeance, the entire police department's focus changed. As pawns in a malevolent plot, they had been coerced. Perjury, fabricating evidence, and filing a fake police complaint are more serious crimes than family disputes. These are severe crimes that threaten the foundation of the legal system itself. There was a new perspective on the anonymous tip. Although Karen had exercised caution, she wasn't a seasoned crook, and forensic specialists started working to track down the burner phone. According to a report, the burner phone was located a few miles away from Karen's known location on the day of the anonymous conversation, based on cell tower data from that time. It was just one more piece of circumstantial evidence that was starting to encircle her tightly. Law enforcement's next action was the one that would split the Roloff family apart more than any dispute over a farm ever could. Matt was not present when two senior detectives drove to Roloff Farms to provide him with an update on his case involving stolen equipment. Their new top suspect, his partner, was the reason they were there to question him. Matt was in his office, perhaps feeling bewildered and angry over the news that Chris had been freed. The major suspect was now at large, and he had thought he had been the victim of a crime. He most likely thought the investigators would explain what had gone wrong. He was unaware that he was going to face a reality so terrible that it would completely upend his universe. The detectives weren't holding back. They outlined Chris' alibi timeline. They showed him the stills from the hotel security camera and the pile of receipts. They clarified that Chris couldn't have physically carried out the theft. According to someone close to the family, Matt's first reaction was one of utter incredulity. How is that possible? His truck contained the evidence. It didn't make sense. Karen had been trusted by him. He had listened to her intuition. The last card was then played by one of the investigators. Like Chris had done the day before, he opened a laptop and saw the wildlife camera footage. He played the shaky black and white film of a lady breaking into Chris and Amy's house in the middle of the night to Matt Roloff. He identified the gate, the build, and the well-known profile. He stopped filming when he saw this SUV driving away, its taillights a glaring and damning clue. The detective continued, "Mr. Roloff," in a grave and flat voice. "There are grounds to think that the individual in this video is Karen Chandler. We suspect that she staged the entire theft, planted the evidence, filed a bogus report through you, and then created a fictitious anonymous tip to frame your ex-wife's husband. We must know your knowledge of this." The room was completely silent. This was a turning point for Matt Roloff. He recalled every discussion he had with Karen on the theft. Her early worry, her hints that it must have been someone with a key, someone who harbored resentment, and her deliberate manipulation of his perception against Chris. With a sickening lurch in his stomach, he knew that he had been the main instrument in her malevolent strategy, not just the victim of a theft. She had utilized his police report, his trust, and his authority as the property owner as tools to further her scheme. It was nearly impossible to comprehend the extent and depth of the treachery. He had never anticipated the darkness that the lady he loved and intended to spend the rest of his life with could possess. It was this darkness that had almost resulted in the imprisonment of an innocent man. Like wildfire, the news spread among the Roloff kids. Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob were all contacted, either by a shell-shocked Matt or a devastated Amy. The response was a universal concoction of incredulity and dread. They have always had to manage the difficulties of divorce and new relationships in their sensitive relationship with Karen. But this was a completely different matter. This was no family quarrel or small-time jealousy. This was a horrifyingly premeditated criminal act. It put into perspective every exchange, perceived slight, and tense moment they had ever seen between Karen and their mother. Something horrible had grown out of the simmering animosity they all knew existed. The family was irreparably broken. For Amy, it was a terrifying confirmation of all the misgivings and concerns she had ever had about Karen. It was a wound that would never go away to realize that this woman hated her so much that she was prepared to ruin Chris' life. Beneath the relief came a silent, seething fury for Chris, the man at the center of it all. Peace, security, and privacy were important to him. Karen had broken it all. His life, his home, and his reputation had all been invaded by her. And Matt found himself standing amid the ruins of his life, having to make an unthinkable decision. The lady he loved was the target of a felony case being built by the police. The evidence was overwhelming. He was now one of the investigation's major witnesses. Would he protect Karen, potentially implicating himself in a cover-up and alienating his entire family forever? Or would he cooperate with the truth and, in doing so, condemn the woman he had built his future around? The family drama, which had so often played out for the cameras as a source of entertainment, had crossed a terrifying line. This was no longer about a farm. It was about a felony. It was about a betrayal so deep it threatened to consume them all. The future of the Roloff family and of Roloff Farms itself was now hanging by a thread, waiting to see what Matt would do next, as the shadow of a criminal trial loomed over them all. The cameras may have stopped rolling, But the most devastating chapter of the Roloff story was just beginning. More update. LPBW, Amy Roloff gives relationship update after end of show. And Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick's dream home pics. And Matt Roloff's big move prepares to close LPBW chapter down forever. I will explain everything. With the Little People Big World Season 25 finale behind us, and the franchise's future uncertain, Amy Roloff recently provided Chris Merrick with an update on their relationship. What is the situation with these two? Fans of Little People Big World have noticed that Chris Merrick has appeared frequently in Amy Roloff's TLC scenes. The show has made extensive use of Chris and Karen Chandler in scenes because Amy and Matt Roloff have both gone on with other individuals. Just in the most recent season of Little People Big World, a major plot point involved Amy, Matt, Chris, and Karen cooperating to organize a fundraiser on Roloff Farms. Numerous other aspects can be explored as well, such as the tension between Amy and Karen, the bromance between Chris and Matt, and more. The relationship between Amy and Matt Roloff was shown in scenes for years by fans of Little People Big World. Since they both moved on and found other partners, viewers can observe how they are doing in their new relationships. That undoubtedly gives the experience greater depth. Karen Chandler and Chris Merrick are not to everyone's taste. The majority of Little People Big World viewers may concur, nevertheless, that Amy and Matt Roloff were far more toxic together than they are now with either of their partners. In that regard, there has undoubtedly been some advancement throughout the process, as many viewers speculated that Season 25 of Little People Big World would be the show's last season. Amy Roloff recently updated viewers on the current status of her marriage to Chris Merrick. A date night was recently attended by the Little People Big World pair. Enjoying some live music, they also caught up with friends. That's something that people enjoy watching. The emotion in scenes is heightened by TLC. Thus, a lot of viewers are finding it relatable to see Amy and Chris having a party and being carefree like this. Despite all of the ups and downs and challenges along the way, it is evident that Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick's marriage is still going strong, regardless of what the franchise's future holds. LPBW, Amy Roloff, and Chris Merrick's dream home pics. Amy Roloff reduced her living space after selling her mansion on the Roloff Farms. Despite living in a modest property, she and Chris Merrick have their sights set on a dream home. In July of last year, it was reported that she and her spouse were actively looking for a new residence. Little People Big World viewers are aware of Chris' high goals and how his ideal home differs greatly from their current residence. TLC watchers saw them tour the home where they would live out their golden years on Tuesday. Following their marriage, Matt and Chris moved into her $600,000 home in 2021. Matt eventually patched up the house and rented it out, despite his ex-wife's eyebrows going up. In addition, he built a brand new residence for himself and Karen Chandler, his fiancée. Did Amy's husband begin searching for a more upscale residence as a result of that? LPBW viewers accuse Amy Roloff of creating a story about Karen Chandler, Matt Roloff, and Chris Merrick. If they want to own the home of their dreams, they might as well continue doing it for the TLC show. Even with their combined wealth, the house they want might be a little expensive to purchase and keep up. On Little People Big World, the bike-riding TLC personality was seen admiring a home he would love. He could fit a row of motorcycles in the 6-car garage, and the kitchen alone would please his wife. He clarified that the idea of fusing a home with an event venue was the inspiration behind the design. There would undoubtedly be enough room for all of the grandchildren to celebrate Christmas here. Despite her admiration for the 10,000 square foot home, Amy Roloff said, she was reluctant to shell out the cash required to buy it. She said, "I'm worried that this property could be a little too costly for us, despite the fact that it's beautiful to look at." If she falls in love, the mother of 4 from Little People Big World might use the large kitchen to continue Amy's little kitchen with Chris Marek's approval. Don't rush into a rejection, he said. I believe the first step is to see if we like it, and if we do, work out how we pay for it. He did mention the dream home of Matt and Karen. Amy might be concerned that they might shake within the huge area because it might take a large gathering to fill it. The scenic views remain beautiful. Additionally, her previous experience living in a huge house is a factor. As a result, she will most likely adjust to her new house in no time. Do you remember how many items she had stored away in the farmhouse? She hoarded, according to her admirers. An individual who claimed to have discovered the house based on Chris Marek's description on Reddit was a fan of Little People, Big World. It's hardly a cheap house, even if they were right. In their response, they said, A and C looked at a house that was listed for $1.4 million, yet there were significantly more photos of the house on Realtor.com than on Zillow. I won't give away the exact address here, but it was very simple to figure out. Let us know what you think of Chris Marek's ideal house, the one he's been eyeing on LPBW. Do you think Amy Roloff was justified in being cautious about the land size? Despite the fact that it is designed to serve as their retirement apartment, she indicated her wish to avoid working until she was 85 in order to meet the costs. Matt Roloff's big move prepares to close LPBW chapter down forever. Fans of Little People, Big World, the family TLC program that was canceled, want to know what Matt Roloff is doing on the farm these days. Recently, Matt informed us that he was closing a significant LPBW chapter forever. What provides? Furthermore, what did Matt just say to his fans? The shooting schedule becomes a part of your everyday routine after a program has been in production for 25 seasons. Indeed, this was the case for Matt Roloff and company until the family program was canceled by TLC following season 25. In case anyone has been ignoring this development, the departure of Zach and Tori Roloff was the catalyst for the cancellation of the show, as only Matt Roloff wanted to continue filming. Since then, Matt Roloff has had a lot going on at Roloff Farms, and he recently experimented with a new look by going hairless. A hitherto unobserved area of the farm was disclosed in Matt Roloff's most recent Little People, Big World social media updates. Matt held up a picture of a barn on the site with pride. This barn was important because the TLC team would set up shop there whenever they were filming the show. However, the filming phase is now finished, and Matt Roloff is closing up that chapter in a very other way. This barn was the comment Matt used when he shared a picture of the barn on social media to his sizable fan base. It makes me happy, as usual. Why do even more of you have never been inside? The reason is that for the past 21 years, it has been the base of operations for the film team. I'll set up a video tour inside shortly, following Matt Roloff's pledge to plan a trip for them. Little People, Big World fans are demanding more barn footage. While many fans were frustrated with Matt and Zach Roloff, many others found great meaning in the TLC family show. Despite the fact that the show is no longer broadcasting, viewers are still waiting for more farm-related information from Matt Roloff. One recent user said, "There's something so visually appealing about a red and white barn." Another commenter added, "And a tour of your new beautiful home. Excellent. I would love a week to relax at the Roloff farm," someone else whispered. "What a beautiful place." Do you think Matt Roloff made the right choice in highlighting a neglected part of the farm? Indicate in the designated space. LPBW, Amy Roloff reveals shocking secret close to her heart. The children weren't all present as Amy Roloff, star of Little People, Big World, celebrated Mother's Day this year. It's difficult to be present at all major events since Zach and Tori live in Washington. Jeremy and Zach's birthdays used to fall on Mother's Day, but this year they didn't. But there was another person who celebrated a birthday. The birthdays of Zach and Jeremy Roloff fell on Mother's Day 4 years ago. mothers and grandparents were wished a beautiful day to celebrate themselves, and the LPBW grandmother took the opportunity to exchange birthday pleasantries. Though it was unclear what they all did that day, it's possible that they all got together at some point. Jackson, the grandson of Amy Roloff, celebrated his birthday early 3 years ago. Amy is a grandma. Mother's Day and Jeremy's relationship with his father fell on the same day. Amy Roloff shared additional information about her deceased mother. It was unclear whether a large celebration brought everyone together. Matt Roloff wishes all people, even those who are not yet mothers but aspire to be, a wonderful Mother's Day this year. He spent time with his mother Peggy, and his Instagram photo also included Jacob Roloff and Karen Chandler. They appeared to have planned a large celebration day as they sat around tables. Amy shared a personal story with her audience about the true meaning of Mother's Day. Despite having 4 children, she informed her supporters that she never imagined becoming a mother. A picture of herself with Audrey and Jeremy was posted by the Little People, Big World actress. She also showed Jacob and Jeremy a picture of herself. Molly was mentioned in the lengthy caption that the TLC star wrote. Amy stated that Zach and Tori were not present with them this year. Perhaps it was because Mother's Day was Jackson's 8th birthday. Additionally, his party appeared to be in Washington. Many fans of Little People, Big World sent him birthday wishes when Tori posted pictures of him. In her post, neither Matt nor Amy were mentioned. Amy Roloff informed her TLC fans in her caption, "Mother's Day. I never imagined that I would become a mother, thus it holds a lot of personal meaning for me. It's quite a title to have, and I took it seriously. A mother to 4 wonderful kids, I am also a grandmother. Here I am with my bookends, 2 wonderful young lads named Jeremy and Jacob. Spent time with Chris, my boys, several of my grandchildren, and spoke with Molly and Zach. I pray for them every day and give thanks to the Lord. Thank you for becoming my mother, children. I adore you all and my family." It sounds like the LPBW star may have spoken on the phone when she claimed to have talked with Molly and Zach. Additionally, she most likely meant Jeremy and Jacob's kids when she said, "a few grandkids." How do you feel about the startling admission that Amy Roloff believed she would never have children? Please leave a remark below. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.